When I was a child, I attended Jewish day school, and then my afternoons were jam-packed with extracurricular activities. You see, I needed to be exposed to Little League because I might grow up to be a baseball player. I needed to be exposed to art because I might grow up to be a painter. I needed to be exposed to Taekwondo because I might grow up to be a ninja. My parents had a piano teacher come to our house for lessons for my brother, my sister, and me. He was older, and oftentimes he'd fall asleep while we were practicing our scales. When he'd nod off, he'd begin to snore, and that was our signal that we could sneak out of the room and join my dad in the living room watching television. My dad would ask, "How was piano?" We'd say, "Fine." And it wasn't until our instructor woke up and began wandering around the house looking for us that we were caught. It probably explains why I'm not a musician. It didn't matter who the instructor was. My parents always invited the Friday afternoon teacher to stay with us for Shabbat dinner. Sometimes it was the older Jewish piano teacher, sometimes it was the young Catholic Taekwondo instructor. My mom always lit the candles. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who sanctified us with your commandments and instructed us to light these Shabbat candles. Those words transformed the candlelight into glowing sanctity. Somehow those candles never felt like birthday candles, and they never felt like candles on the table at a restaurant. They were special. They were holy. Those words combined with that flame resulted in holiness in our home. Then while standing together in that sanctified space around the island in our kitchen, my dad always made kiddush and hamotzi and then blessed us. Often there was at least one guest who watched this entire process unfold. They were always mesmerized, impressed by the meanings of the rituals. We'd sit together at the kitchen table and eat in the glow of the candlelight. It was a fixed part of our week. Whether we were wearing polos or sweaty Taekwondo dobaks, Shabbat always greeted us right on time. And then I still remember the first Shabbat dinner in my life that I received permission to miss. It was my freshman year in high school. And during homecoming weekend, there was an event on Friday night called Battle of the Bands. Coming from a small Jewish day school, the way that students in high school described Battle of the Bands, it felt so essential, so profoundly important. The lineup had to include the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. In those days, Green Day and Dave Matthews Band. I thought it catastrophic for my social life if I were to miss such a crucial event. I know how disappointed and upset my parents were, and I know how much strength they exhibited by saying yes. I have no recollection of who played at Battle of the Bands. I don't remember if I went with friends or who my friends were at that time in my life, to be totally honest. But Mom and Dad, if it's any consolation, I remember feeling guilty the entire time I was there. As far as I drifted away from Yiddishkeit in public high school and then later at USC and in my film career, I always expected to return one day to Shabbat dinner. Sure enough, after Blair and I got married, we began making Shabbat dinners. They were different from my parents. They were ours. And when we had kids, I started to bless them. And now with both of us as working parents, and our 3 kids in way too many extracurricular activities all over the city and the valley, for which we need way too much help, schlepping them around all week long after our never-ending work days are never done. All 5 of us can count on the holy light of those candles on Friday night to signal to us that the craziness of the week is over. We can sit at the table, completely focused on one another without intrusion. In this unpredictable, hectic world, Shabbat dinner is the most steadfast anchor in my week and the week of my family, and it should be for you and your family as well. Shabbat is a magical time in which we can stop our weekly activities. We stop and celebrate the connections, the relationships of family and friends. We stop to show our family and friends we're always willing to pause our hectic lives for our loved ones. With work consuming us almost 24 hours every day, with our phones and our emails always on and always with us, Shabbat is the proof, perhaps the only proof left, that we remain in control of our lives. Shabbat is perhaps the most recognizable proof that we work to live and that we don't live to work, that we live our weekly lives toward a purpose. On Rosh Hashanah, I spoke to you about our collective spiritual journey through chaos and vulnerability to courage and ultimately meaning. That was a sermon about priorities, a way in which we should see the world, a thought process. Judaism demands that we stand courageously vulnerable before chaos in order to pursue meaning. Well, practically speaking, what does that look like? As much as Judaism is an exercise in thought, in education, as much as our learning together and our reflection together is crucial, it's not enough to think Jewish. We need to do Jewish. We need to enact our Judaism through our behavior. Today on Yom Kippur, on Shabbat Shabbaton, on Shabbat of all of Shabbats, I'd like for all of us to begin prioritizing Shabbat dinners as the first step to bringing meaning into our lives. One of the reasons that I know the power of Shabbat dinner is because I can see Judaism through the eyes of those who choose it. It's been a great surprise to me that such a meaningful component of my rabbinate is derived from my involvement in AJU's Introduction to Judaism class. There I teach the basics of Judaism to a class that includes some people on the path to conversion. There are always some students who are just seekers trying to find a spiritual path. And there are always adult Jews who would like to actually learn about Judaism decades after their B'nai Mitzvah and religious school is over. I'm excited to announce that VBS will be welcoming our own Introduction to Judaism cohort onto our campus beginning in December. It'll be a wonderful way for our clergy to connect with even more people considering how to involve Judaism into their lives, and for more people of all walks of life to find VBS as a home. The conversion process concludes at the Beit Din, at the rabbinic court, which precedes the immersion into the holy waters of the mikveh. At the Beit Din, I always ask, what drew them to our people, to our tradition, to our family? Without fail, candidates for conversion speak of two things: of the open mindset in Judaism to ask questions, and they speak of the beauty and the significance of Shabbat dinners. Just 2 weeks ago, Rabbi Feinstein, Cantor Barron, and I formed a Beit Din in my office for a conversion candidate. And we asked her, "Why do you want to be Jewish?" She smiled nervously. And with a twinkle in her eye, she began to describe the wonder of lighting the candles like our foremothers and making the special time with her fiancé each week. She explained that all the other dinners they go to are fun. The one on Friday night is different. It's meaningful. I began to panic. I thought she had read my Rosh Hashanah sermon early. Another conversion candidate explained that she watched her son have a Shabbat experience in preschool, and she wanted it to continue for her family. She wanted to be able to provide that structure during a week that always feels out of control. For outsiders, Shabbat feels remarkably innovative and foundationally spiritual. For insiders, for most Jews in America today, for us, Shabbat feels like an endless list of impediments filled with can't do's. So let's start together right now. What can we do? What kind of Shabbat can we create? How do we begin to rebuild Jewish practice for ourselves in our time? I'm sure that if I asked you about your favorite Shabbat, many of you would tell me stories about camp, about Hillel, about trips to Israel. I have many favorite Shabbat memories. When we brought our children home from the hospital when they were born, when I blessed them for the first time. Stories about our family standing around the candles in Disney World. Stories about walking around Jerusalem, about getting lost and wandering looking for dinner. But I'd like to share a favorite Shabbat moment that happened in our home approximately 10 years ago. You see, when Blair and I had our oldest daughter, she was an angel. We held her in our arms on Shabbat, and she grew up participating in everything we ever asked her to do. It was clear to us that we were amazing parents. It was clear to me that I was going to be a profoundly impactful rabbi. And then we had our son. And he was also an angel. After all, he's sitting here in the sanctuary listening to this story. But he was an angel who didn't like to wear a kippah on Friday nights, or Saturday morning, or ever. On Friday nights before we lit the candles, I'd try to place a kippah on his head, and he'd stop me. Or at that moment, he'd decide for the first time in the week it was time to try to do jumping jacks. Or he'd run by and it would fall on the floor. We'd walk into synagogues here in LA, and people would stop Blair and me. And I'm sure it was with the best of intentions. As if we weren't aware, they would tell me that my son should be wearing a kippah. And I'd nod my head, and I'd ask them for a stapler. How could I be a rabbi if my own son wouldn't wear a kippah? And then one day I came down the stairs of our townhouse, ready to join candlelighting. There he was, standing in a onesie set of green pajamas, wearing a Dodgers kippah. He exuded joy, so proud of himself, the biggest grin you could possibly imagine. I was so moved, I did what all good parents do. I ran for my phone to take a picture. And that photo became the wallpaper on my phone. It still is today. The kippah is only a piece of cloth. But for me, in that moment, it represented the entirety of the Jewish tradition. And Shabbat allowed him the opportunity each week to say no or to say yes. Shabbat provides us an environment each week to express our values. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs taught, and I quote, "If I would define what Shabbat is about, it's about combating some of the material influences of a consumer society, which teaches us to see the price of things, but not the value of things. Shabbat is the time when we celebrate the things that have value, but don't have a price. As so much continues to rise in price all around us in society, Shabbat teaches us the value of family, friends, community, wisdom, commitment, togetherness. All that remains absolutely priceless." Most Jewish leaders are once again focused on the challenges of Jewish life again in America. If our big task is safeguarding the future of Judaism by teaching and living the tradition to spark love and connection for future generations, then Shabbat dinner is where we should start. Enjoying Shabbat is the most accessible mitzvah for us as a springboard for living a Jewish life. Is there a more accessible point for our people in our tradition than us coming together, lighting the candles, saying Kiddush, saying Hamotzi, blessing our kids, and eating delicious food? Shabbat dinners does not depend on theology or faith. It doesn't require deep Jewish understanding or learning. It doesn't mandate a level of formality. It requires an appetite to eat and a commitment of time. This year will mark the 50th yahrzeit of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who left an indelible mark on the American Jewish community. Published in 1951, his masterpiece, The Sabbath, Its Meaning for Modern Man, celebrates Shabbat as a new paradigm of time. Heschel wrote, and I quote, "Judaism teaches us to be attached to holiness in time, to be attached to sacred events, to learn how to consecrate sanctuaries that emerge from the magnificent stream of a year. The Sabbaths are our great cathedrals, and our Holy of Holies is a shrine that neither the Romans nor the Germans were able to burn, a shrine that even apostasy cannot easily obliterate, the Day of Atonement. There is," end of quote, "there is an undeniable interconnectedness between Yom Kippur and Shabbat. Whichever way we look at it, Shabbat is either a weekly holiday experience or Yom Kippur is the annual culmination of our Shabbat ritual. One cannot be divorced from the other. Decades ago, VBS was defined by its Friday night programming, by Rabbi Schulweiss's teachings, by food, and by Israeli dancing. I know because I've heard about these Friday nights from so many of you. Some of you told me that the attendance often exceeded 1,000 people. Some say that it often exceeded 100,000 people. Some of you have told me that hundreds of millions of people flooded our campus each and every week. My intention is to once again prioritize those exact values of community, of tradition, of Shabbat. My intention is that we, inside this community, once again take pride in Friday night, just adapted to our new reality today. As much as I enjoy turning on my phone after Shabbos and seeing your selfies on Facebook and Instagram, at the Lakers games or at Hollywood Bowl, I'd like to start seeing you take pride in Shabbat dinner at home with family and friends. This will become our new reality. We will once again define ourselves by our Friday night programming, this time at home. Today marks the beginning of my very first initiative here at VBS. We're calling it Very Best Shabbat Dinners, as in VBS dinners. Very Best Shabbat Dinners. Each month we will have featured Shabbat dinners in our VBS community. Each dinner will be designed by the host to welcome friends and family, and hopefully some new members that wouldn't otherwise be known to that group. In this way, Shabbat dinners will build for us a sense of community. They'll build for us a sense of tradition. They'll build for us a sense of priority. Some of us already host Shabbat dinners. It's great. I commend you. Please keep it up. And please join our effort and make your home one of our featured very best Shabbat dinners. This isn't a one-time program. This is like going to the gym. I know, because I'm that guy who does 10 sit-ups and then stands up and looks at my new stomach in the mirror. And then I never come back to the gym again. This act, this decision, to start having Shabbat dinners. This intentionality only works if we decide to enact Shabbat over and over and over again. The commitment will signal that we are choosing a spiritual journey forward, together toward a greater sense of meaning and purpose in our lives. We need hosts to volunteer their homes and welcome community, and we need community to show up and be friendly and participate and, well, eat. In this community, there's a zeal to get together, a passion to see one another again after so many years, that passion to host and to be welcomed, to see friends and family after such a long time apart. That'll convene us before the flicker of the candles. We will become a community known for Shabbat dinners. If you're a family with young children, that's great. Please welcome other families into your home. If you're empty nesters, please welcome empty nesters. You want intergenerational dinners? Terrific, go for it. Shabbat dinners for singles? I think it's a great idea. The experience will be shaped largely by the hosts. The dinners should not be the same. We have to start learning to craft and recraft very best Shabbat dinners to be our own, to have a sense of ownership over Shabbat. While the clergy cannot be present for each of these personal dinners, we'll do our very best to help support you in every way we can. For those of you who need help with the blessings, Cantor Raffi and I will record videos walking you through the entire process. Turn on the video and light the candles with us. Say Kiddush with us. Make hamotzi with us. Bless your children with us. If you need help with recipes, we'll provide you with suggested dishes, traditional Ashkenazic ones, and Jewish cultural dishes from around the world. But food will no longer be the driving force for our dinners. Our Shabbat dinners will not be defined by the perfect chicken dish. We can serve chicken on fine china in the dining room, or we can serve pizza on paper plates in the backyard. The significance of our Shabbat does not depend on the extravagance of the meal or the formality of the setting. Joining this initiative as a host family or as a guest, making Shabbat dinner a sacred time in your life as a priority, will become the most impactful Jewish experience of your life. Shabbat dinner establishes profound connections that cannot be untangled. Placing your hands on your children's heads and blessing them will build a connection stronger than saying I love you can ever convey. Friends become family through the illumination of the candles. Acquaintances become friends when everyone tries to tear into the center of the challah at exactly the same moment. Our first opportunity to share Shabbat dinner together will actually be here in the synagogue at my installation on Friday night, November 4th. It'll be a formal celebration of my installation as the senior rabbi. Kabbalat Shabbat and installation will follow the dinner. I hope you can all join me for the evening. The magic of Shabbat is our incredible innate ability to achieve its purpose. We are meant for Shabbat dinner. It's an experience designed for our people, for our family. Achad Ha'am famously said, more than the Jewish people have kept Shabbat, Shabbat has kept the Jewish people. And I will say, it's time for us to begin keeping Shabbat again. So it is with great appreciation that I want to thank the committee of lay leaders who have volunteered to help spearhead this effort. I want to thank Donna and Ron Bender, Karen and Mark Gettleman, Nancy and Scott Beiser, Narit and Rich Robin, Andrea and Danny Corson, Jenny and Jeff Podell, Marissa and Andrew Leitner for serving on the committee. And I want to thank everyone who has already volunteered to host a dinner. As of yesterday, I'm proud to acknowledge that we've already gathered our first 52 host dinners. If you've already volunteered to host a very best Shabbat dinner, please stand now and be recognized. And now we're looking for guests. Who here in this sanctuary enjoys eating delicious food? I hope you join these dinners. Can I tell you a secret? The Or Chadash, the new light, that we've been discussing as our theme for months, it's not only up here on the bima. It's also in your homes each and every time we light the candles and we recite Lahadlik Ner Shel Shabbat. Every Friday night is a new light and burns bright in our homes. It's the new glow that will reflect in your child's face when he or she recognizes Shabbat, when we gaze upon the challah, in the eyes of a new friend sitting at the table enjoying Shabbat in your home for the first time. My special talent isn't piano, and it's not soccer, and it's not art. It's this. It's guiding us on a path forward. It's helping us all prioritize connection and meaning and blessing. We need to carry the torch of the Jewish tradition forward into a chaotic future. The torch is profound and overwhelming. It's a flame 3,000 years large. And we're going to carry that enormous torch forward by simply dividing it between all of our homes and lighting those small Shabbat candles one at a time. The only reason I expected to return one day to Shabbat dinners was because I experienced them before, and I never forgot them. And when I bless my kids, I know they'll never forget it. And that's my prayer today for all of us, to carve out spaces and times in which the candles and the wine and the challah and the people can create indelible memories for you and your loved ones. We come here on Yom Kippur, Shabbat Shabbaton, the Shabbat of all Shabbats, looking for new inspiring ideas. What's old is new again. Our inspiring idea is what has always inspired us, Lahadlik Ner Shel Shabbat. I invite you to join us in this endeavor. Let's keep Shabbat, and let's allow Shabbat to keep us once again. May we all be inscribed for a good year, a year of spiritual growth, a year of inspiration, a year of connection, a year of delicious, meaningful Shabbat dinners. Gemar Chatima Tova.
May the Lord protect and defend you. May God always shield you from shame. May you come to be in Israel a shining name. May you be like Ruth and like Esther. May you be deserving of praise. Favor us, O Lord, with happiness and peace, or hear our Sabbath prayer. Amen. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, a bright, blessed day, and the dark, sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, "How do you do?" They're really saying, "I love you." I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I